You've definitely seen the headlines lately. I mean, a real whirlwind of high-stakes diplomatic activity, all centered around the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
Yeah, lots of meetings, phone calls, and a ton of speculation about what it all really means for peace.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We want to try and cut through some of that noise, look at the sources, and really understand, what actual progress, if any, was made.
Right, what are the roadblocks? And fundamentally, what's truly at stake for everyone involved? We're talking about Trump, Putin, Zelensky, various European leaders. Quite the cast.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the setup itself was, well, pretty unusual from the get-go. Our sources suggest this wasn't some long-planned thing.
No, not at all. These meetings were apparently prepared on very short notice, almost like a panic across Europe, is how some described
It
it.
involved this very strange, small group of European leaders. Many apparently picked because they had, good personal ties with Trump.
It sounds less like careful strategy and more like an urgent scramble, doesn't it?
It really does. It speaks volumes about maybe the perceived need to get Trump engaged, especially with his unique style.
Absolutely. That ad hoc feel is quite telling. It really highlights this reactive stance Europe felt it had to take rather than, being proactive.
So let's get into this diplomatic dance then. The key players' agendas, starting with Ukrainian President Zelensky.
Right.
During his meeting with Trump, his main job apparently was just to stop a repeat of that disastrous White House meeting from before.
Yes, the one where he felt kind of sidelined.
Exactly. And sources say he did this by taking a very humble posture. He even wore a suit, basically doing everything to please Trump.
That sounds like quite the performance.
It does. And his willingness for a trilateral meeting, him, Trump, Putin, that was seen as a good signal. But does that kind of approach, the careful choreography, actually get results? Or is it just damage control?
Well, it's definitely a high-wire act for Zelensky. The strategy seems clearly aimed at smoothing things over personally with Trump, avoiding another public issue.
Makes sense.
And that trilateral signal,
Hmm?
it's significant. It suggests he's open to this high-stakes direct negotiation, which, could cut through red tape.
It's risky.
Immensely risky. He could be pressured into concessions without his allies backing him up right there. So it's opening a door, but who knows what's behind it.
And then there's Trump. His unique diplomatic style, apparently putting a lot of personal energy into this, driven by wanting to be seen as a peace steward.
Yes, Redespictor in the original source, I believe. And his involvement is credited by some with moving a completely stuck process forward, which, sounds positive on the surface.
But the potential pitfalls,
Huh.
his strong desire for a deal, any deal.
That's the worry. His eagerness could lead to him maybe misunderstanding some things or accepting a solution that doesn't really solve the underlying problems just to secure an agreement.
And there's that observation that it often seems like he just adopts the proposals of the last person he talks to.
Which isn't just a quirk, right? It's a strategic wild card. It means any progress made one day could be totally flipped the next. Talk about uncertainty for allies trying to plan. Highly volatile.
That really highlights the dynamic between Trump and Putin, which brings us to the Alaska meeting.
Ah, yes. A striking contrast there.
Totally. Trump welcomed Putin with all honors, showed much respect, clapped for him, gave him the first word at the press conference.
Yeah, sources made it clear they saw each other as great powers. Very different from how he interacted with European leaders.
Who often seem to be in a more questioning, pleading role.
Exactly. For Ukraine and Europe, that Alaska meeting felt less like a breakthrough and more like something they needed to limit the damage from.
An effort to get Trump on their side before he maybe did something counter to their interest.
Precisely. It really spotlights a deep-seated worry they had about that particular dynamic.
So given that, how were the European leaders trying to navigate this, caught between these two figures?
It was a real balancing act and kind of a multi-pronged approach. Beyond just showing up in large numbers, which Swipses say Trump really appreciated, making it harder for him to claim this never happened.
Right.
They were trying to manage his style, not necessarily confront it head on. You had some, like German Chancellor Merz, being very direct about warnings and red lines.
Yeah.
Others, maybe using their personal rapport with Trump, worked more behind the scenes, trying to gently guide things. They did manage to influence him, seems like, at least in keeping him on the leash a little bit, regarding continued support for Ukraine.
But the overall feeling was
Kind of a lot of fireworks with few results so far.
Yeah.
More like containment than, tangible progress at that stage.
Okay, and one of those deeper issues where things really shifted was the stance on ceasefires. This seems like a key turning point.
Absolutely. The chessboard got really shaken up here.
Before Trump met Putin, he was apparently hammering on a ceasefire, constantly talking about it.
But after their meeting, the ceasefire seemed, well, off the table.
Why? What happened there?
Well, the simplest explanation is Putin didn't want it. He believes he's winning, or at least that the momentum is with him. A ceasefire freezes the map, lets Ukraine regroup.
So Putin wants a decisive outcome.
Seems so. And Trump, well, he adopted Putin's talking points, now seeking a complete peace plan for the whole war, not just a temporary pause. That shift really changed the game for the Europeans.
Because for European countries, that ceasefire was meant to be a strategic test, right? A way to test whether Putin would be willing to stop the war.
Exactly. And for Ukraine and the EU, a ceasefire is still a precondition for any real talks. German Chancellor Merz, for instance, really hammered this point, said he couldn't imagine a meeting without one first.
And that insistence didn't go over universally well. There was that mention of an eye roll from Italy's Meloni.
Yeah, you can almost picture it, can't you? Merz being very formal, stressing the ceasefire, and Meloni perhaps thinking, oh, let's not spoil the mood, wanting to move forward.
It highlights the internal tensions.
For sure. Some prioritizing maybe a faster path to a deal, others worried about the foundations. Europe's big concern here is making sure Trump understands Putin cannot be trusted, that a bad deal, when you can't enforce, has to be avoided.
Merz emphasized this is only the beginning of a negotiation process, not the end.
Right, not a quick fix.
So, with all this diplomatic back and forth, where are the biggest roadblocks, the real sticking points? Sources point to two main ones. First, territorial concessions, the geographic and human cost.
And to really grasp this, we need to look back. Think about the map of Ukraine starting around 2014.
Okay. February 2014, the Maidan Revolution, pro-Russian President Yanukovych ousted.
Then, very quickly, those green men, Russian soldiers without insignia, appear in Crimea. An illegal and manipulated referendum happens, and boom, Russia controls the peninsula.
And in the east, Donbass, Donetsk, and Luhansk.
Right, areas with many ethnic Russians. Russian-backed separatists declare these independent people's republics. Years of civil war follow, leaving those areas largely under separatist control.
Fast forward to February 24, 2022. Russia launches the full-scale invasion. Ukraine fights back hard, pushes them from some areas, but can't expel them completely.
And then from late 2023, we see Russia making that slow but steady advance.
The human cost is just staggering. As of June, independent estimates, maybe up to 250,000 Russian casualties, up to 100,000 Ukrainian. Devastating.
It truly is. And this history, this ongoing fight, is absolutely critical for understanding Putin's current demands. His proposal is stark. Russia keeps all occupied territories.
All of them.
All currently occupied territories. And Ukraine must completely withdraw from the Donbass, meaning from the parts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts they still control.
Wow, what would that actually mean for Ukraine? It sounds like it would just gut the country.
The implications are immense, yes. Ukraine would lose cities, key heavily fortified areas like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk in the Donbass. These aren't just towns, they're military headquarters.
Losing them makes Ukraine much more vulnerable to attacks on places like Kharkiv, for instance.
Exactly. More vulnerable strategically, but also psychologically, politically. It means giving up land they've fought hard for, land where so much blood has been shed since 2014. It's relinquishing sovereign territory under extreme pressure.
There's that stark observation from historian Sergei Radchenko and our sources. He thinks the Trump team might misunderstand Putin's real goal.
What do you say again? It was chilling.
He said, Putin is Ukraine's future. He wants Ukraine to disappear. That this is a much bigger prize for Putin than just strips of land.
Wow. If that's the actual long-term ambition, does that just change everything? Can you even negotiate peace if one side's goal is the other's non-existence?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It makes the whole conflict feel almost intractable. If that's the view, then peace could just be a tactic towards that end goal, not a real resolution.
And it suggests that focusing only on territory or ceasefires misses the existential core of it. This also creates that impossible dilemma for Zelensky.
Because Trump said any decision on territory is up to Zelensky.
Right. So, picture that potential three-way meeting. Zelensky, Putin, Trump. Zelensky's under massive pressure. Either he rejects Trump's deal and risks Trump's anger, maybe losing vital U.S. support.
Or he accepts giving up territory.
and faces the absolute fury of his own people who've sacrificed everything for that land. Sources are pretty clear. It's highly unlikely he'll sign away huge chunks of Ukrainian territory for just some unclear promise of some kind of future American security guarantees.
Which leads us right to the second huge sticking point, those security guarantees, the reliability of any future peace.
Crucial. Any deal needs guarantees Russia won't just attack again later.
Trump's envoy, Witkoff, mentioned something like NATO's Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. That sounds significant, big, as the source says.
Right.
But what are the immediate problems?
Well, two huge ones jump out immediately. First, what kind of security guarantees will Russia accept? Because they have to agree too, presumably.
And second,
What kind of security guarantees is the United States willing to offer? And on that point, Trump told Fox News flat out, the U.S. does not want to send troops to Ukraine.
okay, so that limits the Article 5-like promise right away, doesn't it?
Mhm.
What about Russia's conditions? Have they ever indicated what they'd accept?
Interestingly, yes. Even back in those Istanbul talks in 2022, the ones that failed, the Russians apparently showed some willingness to discuss Western guarantees. But, and this is a massive
There's always a catch.
always, they wanted to insert Russia's veto power over using those guarantees, meaning any collective defense action would need Russia's okay.
Which basically makes the guarantee meaningless. It turns it into a pact Russia can break whenever it wants.
Precisely, it negates the whole point.
And European willingness. They keep saying they'd offer real hard security guarantees, maybe even station European troops.
They have said that, yes. Countries like the UK, for example. But another catch, they'll only do this if the Americans provide a backstop. Meaning, if European troops get into a fight with Russian forces in Ukraine, the Europeans want Trump to basically say, okay, America's in, we'll fight on your side.
And that's exactly what Trump has not wanted all this time.
Right. So you see the deadlock. And the danger is, if Europe offers guarantees without that solid U.S. backing, maybe just weapons and training, it could just incentivize continuous testing by Russia, pushing the boundaries, knowing the U.S. might not step in militarily.
And underlying all of this is the fundamental issue of trust, or lack thereof, Russia's credibility.
Yeah, the sources are blunt. President Putin has rarely kept commitments. Russia's track record shows it being a constantly destabilizing power, always looking to revise borders to extend its power.
That history just casts a huge shadow over everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It raises serious questions about the credibility of Russia in any future deal.
Absolutely. An agreement is only as strong as the trust behind it. And history shows a major trust deficit here. If a country keeps breaking past agreements like Russia did regarding Ukraine's territory, how can you enforce a new one? It makes any deal inherently fragile.
So, okay, despite all the diplomatic fireworks, as our sources called it, the war grinds on. Still no ceasefire, let alone a lasting peace. The road ahead looks long and bumpy.
It certainly does. That potential meeting Zelensky, Putin, Trump is seen as the final piece for any agreement. But that implies the deal itself needs to be incredibly well prepared at a technical level, at a diplomatic level.
And as of recently, the actual plan itself was just not clear,
Yeah.
still very much up in the air.
And there's that lingering risk highlighted in one analysis that Putin might actually aim for a vague agreement that cannot be implemented.
An agreement designed to be continuously violated later.
Potentially. One that keeps things unstable, doesn't actually solve anything, but maybe gives him a temporary advantage or freezes the conflict in a way that benefits Russia long term. It's a critical concern.
It really is. Which leaves us with a pretty profound thought to mull over, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Considering Russia's history, Putin's stated goals, that whole chilling idea of wanting Ukraine to eventually disappear, what would a truly robust, enforceable peace agreement even look like?
Yeah.
How do you craft something that goes beyond just pausing the fighting and genuinely secures Ukraine's future instead of just, delaying the inevitable?
That is a very challenging question, and probably one without easy answers right now, something for all of us to think about.